if I don't remember to start it, you start, remind me.
Okay, sounds good. So hi everyone. Okay, so it's only a couple of us here. Hi.
Yeah, we're a couple
It's
minutes early.
here.
Who let that Brit guy
Great.
in? Gee.
Who is this guy?
um, yeah, standard. I put in the chat that normal pinned message will start about 5 after. Everybody introduce themselves. Blah blah blah. So,
Okay.
give it a couple minutes here.
Your mechanical keyboard is loud, Pretty saying.
You know you're a developer when you have a mechanical keyboard, right? We all, it's like a point of pride for a developer. You gotta have a clacky keyboard.
I do not have one.
Really? Oh, come on.
And a game chair. Yeah.
Right? Hey, this was a Costco. This was a Costco. It's blurred, but this was a Costco buy. It was not an expensive chair. It is the top of the hour now. People are starting to trickle in. So hello, everyone, and good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on our final DataDev TUG event of the year. We're so glad to have you. As usual, we'll get started in about 5 minutes here. So stretch your legs, refill your water, or whatever afternoon beverage you prefer, and we will get started about 3:05, excuse me. All right, we've had a couple more people join. Thanks, everybody, and good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're joining us from. And welcome to the final DataDev TUG meetup of 2025. We're so glad to have you with us. We're going to get started about 5 after, so in about 3 minutes here. So get up, stretch your legs, grab some water, whatever you need, and we will get started soon. Thanks again for joining.
Hi, Christian. Welcome.
Hi Paula, how are you?
Good, good. Yeah, we are just waiting for more people to join. Um, it's already 3:04, so we are gonna give maybe one more minute and then we can get started.
Good. I was joking, Kyle, that I thought that you are going to bring the same jacket without.
It's
You know.
just in the next room. I could go change real quick.
Yeah,
I could
but
do it. Don't tempt me.
yeah, but my thing is that we normally go to the meetings with the same color jacket.
That is true. We have been doing that a lot.
Yeah, I'm so jealous. Like now, everybody's posting the Tableau Ambassador swag. I haven't gotten mine.
We'll go. My got yesterday.
You got it yesterday? Yeah, oh, nice.
It's a good haul this year. You did good.
Nice.
Wink, wink, Britt. Tell your team you did good. All right, should we get started?
Sure.
All right, kick us off, Paula. Let's go.
Sounds good. And you're already recording, right?
Yeah, it started again when somebody else, some other host joined. So we'll trim it before we post it.
Sounds good. So yeah, let me just share my screen here. Okay, so hi everyone and welcome to our November meetup. My name is Paula Munoz and I'm gonna be the host today. So thank you for joining. We are so happy to have you all here. So our leaders, I think you already know all of us, but just to mention, we have Christian, Kyle, Marcelo, who are Tableau Visionaries as well as Tableau DataDev Ambassadors. And we also have Jordan and myself, who are DataDev Ambassadors. I'm a DataDev Ambassador for the second year. Yay! Yeah, just want to say thank you to both Christian and Kyle who are in the call, as well as any other data visionary or data dev ambassador. Thank you for everything that you do for the community. I know that without you, we wouldn't be able to learn and do as much as we do. So thank you so much for everything that you do for the Tableau community. Okay, so the game plan for today, we have some announcements. We're going to talk about what DataDevQuest is, if maybe this is your first time attending this meeting. We are going to talk about the hackathon that is coming. It's pretty good. Then I'm going to pass it on to Kyle, who is going to be presenting the solutions from October challenges, which were related to the embedding API. And then I will pass it on to Christian, who is going to introduce the new challenges about Tableau NCP. Pretty exciting. And then last but not least, we're going to talk about how to join our community if you are not part of the different Slack channels yet. So DataDevQuest, in case this is the first time you are joining us, welcome. We are happy to have you here. DataDevQuest is a community initiative we started last year. And the goal of this community project is to have people explore and learn about the different Tableau APIs and the different Tableau data dev tools. And the reason for doing that is because with the Tableau APIs and data dev tools, we could extend Tableau capabilities, we can embed analytics into custom applications, and we can just build advanced and automated solutions. So it's a pretty cool community project to be part of. The goal or the idea is that we introduce or we present two challenges. There is always one beginner challenge and one intermediate or more advanced challenge. We have a Slack channel. So if you have your phone around and you are not part of this Slack channel yet, just scan this QR code so you can join if you have any specific questions about the challenges presented. So far, we have already gone through 18 challenges. And you can see here in the screen all the different APIs that we have worked on. We are going to be, like today, Kyle is going to be presenting the solution about the Tableau Embedding API. And then Christian is going to be presenting the new one about Tableau MCP. So we have covered, different tools, like we have used Python, JavaScript, SQL, like all these different tools. And for people that are, beginners in the data dev world, you don't need to feel intimidated because, as always, we are presenting a beginner challenge and an intermediate challenge. And by the end of the month, in a meeting like this one, we present the solution. So if for any reason maybe you were not able to complete the challenge, you can attend the meeting, you can go through the solution, and then we post the solution so you can go back and revisit and learn from yourself. Also, we have great team members like Lilu and Joshua. They always post their solutions. Lilu records videos. I know Joshua also records videos. So we have great community team members here that are always willing to share the solutions with the community. So don't feel intimidated by the challenges. Just start doing them. I know we are all busy with work, but this is really great because the goal of these challenges, especially like the data dev challenges, is that we are presenting real world challenges, like things that you can apply to your work. So what you learn here, you can go back and in a different way, you may be able to incorporate in what you are doing at work.
And Paula, before we move on from that slide, if you don't mind, so Christian, I stole this slide from your presentation at DataDev Day. So anyone who was on DataDev Day, you recognize this, and this was a chance for us to reflect a little bit on the past year. As Christian said in DataDev Day, we had a couple false starts getting this going. It was always something we said we wanted to do, and then this didn't work out, and that didn't work out. But we finally found like the right core group of people, and I personally could not be prouder of what we've done with this and how we've worked together as a team. And I just, reflecting on the year, I want to thank you, Paula, you, Christian, Jordan, Marcelo, Joshua and Lee for always participating, and just everybody who's gotten behind this, because it really was something that was missing from the community. There wasn't like an ongoing challenge type initiative that there was like for vizzes and things like that, and data prep, things like that. And I'm very, very proud of what we've done as a team. So I want to give credit where credit's due to everybody on the call and everybody who's joined the calls and given us feedback and their submissions and all of that.
Love that, Kyle. Love that part. It's amazing that 18 challenge in a year. As you say, we basically launched this initiative 3 times. But what you say, this initiative has 5 years in thinking. Like,
in the works, yeah.
Yes. Like I saw the idea coming and back. Every new ambassador that comes say, hey, why we don't have a challenge page for us? And then comes, but make it a reality is really hard. I appreciate all the help, including the people that is not leader and is helping. For example, remember that Nick did a challenge, and he set the precedent that basically everybody that wants to help and create his own challenge can do it. The invitation is that you can do it too if you want to. Only contact with us.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you so much, Kyle and Christian, for the add-on. Definitely. Okay, so moving on, we have the Tableau Hackathon. So people just prep because it is open until January 12th next year. There are 45K in cash prizes, including a 17K grand prize. And there are different categories. For example, the best data ledger implementation, the best use of actionable analytics, best product extensibility, best use of semantic modeling. Yeah, just scan the QR code to learn more about this. There are great resources. So if it's the first time you are going to be participating in a hackathon, don't worry, you are not alone. There is a Slack channel. And tomorrow, November the 20th, there is already a workshop. It's called the Ready, Set, Hack, New Features in Tableau and Hackathon Resources. So please join this session if you want to learn more about it. But just know that you are not alone. There are a lot of resources for you to succeed in this hackathon. So just scan the QR code to participate. Yeah, we can see here, why do we want to participate in a hackathon? Because we get free access to Tableau. We are going to get access to Data 360, Agentforce, and Slack for Hackathon. So this is a great way to get access to these tools and data that we wouldn't be able to if we wouldn't be part of these hackathons. And as a reminder, what I mentioned, tomorrow, November the 20th at 9 and 10 PST, there is a session for you to learn more about this hackathon. Okay, so I'm going to pass it on to you, Kyle. So he's going to be presenting the solutions for both the beginner and the intermediate challenges about embedding API. So you can take it on, Kyle.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paula. I think, can you stop screen sharing? There we go. Now let me start. Okay, so let me share the correct screen here, which is this one. We might get an infinity mirror for a second, but that's okay. So actually, let me jump into the website first. So sorry, a little discombobulated here. Here we go. All right, so DataDevQuest. So let's jump into our beginner challenge here. And so the beginner challenge for embedding, if we remember, if you were on the last call, is we basically just want to start working with the embedding API, some of our very first interactions, which is what happens when a viz becomes interactive, right? So when we were releasing the challenge, we also highlighted a really great tool called the Tableau Embedding, the Embedding API Playground, which I'll pull it up just again as a reminder. So this is a great way to get started if you're brand new with embedding, and just kind of a more visual way to walk through what you can do, because the embedding API docs are very complete, but they're kind of dense. And if you're brand new to this, it might be kind of hard to parse out like what's actually available here. So in this embedding API playground, just as a reminder, right, you can just go with the sample viz unless you want to provide your own. And what it'll allow you to do is to start manipulating and playing around with some of the different things that you can do, like adding interactions, like if I change marks on a worksheet, if I clear the marks, things like that. And I will actually highlight that in the second challenge here. But what we're really focusing on in the first challenge is just this very first example that the embedding playground provides you with, which is adding an event listener for first interactive. So let's jump over and look at this in a more practical sense, okay? So I am going to pull this up in VS Code. I'm going to zoom in a little bit to make this a little bit easier. And so the challenges, as the solutions I have are going to follow like a pattern here. There's 3 files we're looking at. I'm not going to go through every single one line by line, but essentially, if you are relatively new to web development, front-end development, or whether you're familiar here, so I've got my HTML page, which is, you can think of the HTML as more like the structure, the frame of your imaginary house. We have our styles, which is like the drywall and the decorations and things like that that make the inside of the house look pretty. And then you have your JavaScript functions, which are like your electricity and your appliances. They make things happen, right? So the first thing we're going to talk about for the beginner example, and I'm going to demo this real quick. One thing to know when you're using the embedding API, right, is your web page needs to be served, and meaning that if I were to just go into like a web browser and try to open index.html here as a file, I would run into some issues because the browser's not reading it as a web page, but is reading it as a file. VS Code actually makes this really easy though. So if this is the IDE that you're using for an HTML file, all you need to do is right click on the file and do open with live server. And as soon as I do that, it is going to serve this page to me as a web page. And now everything that you would get from something that's out on the internet would work as we expected here. So I'm going to refresh just to show off the goal of this challenge one more time. But essentially, when we think about embedding using the embedding API versus something like an embedded iframe or thinking about maybe you embed something in Confluence or something like that, where it's really, you've carved out a little space for the viz or dashboard or whichever to just sit there, but there's no back and forth communication between the viz and your page or your application. The embedding API is the step further that we're for the challenge here, where now we're not just carving out a spot for your viz to sit, we're actually making the viz part of your page or your application. And that means your application can talk to your viz and vice versa. But, right, so if you have a user that lands in your application and maybe there's several components that are all, communicating back and forth with your viz and other parts, you don't really want your user to start doing things until your viz is ready, if that's, one of your requirements here. So that first interactive event listener that I mentioned in the playground comes into play here. So let's watch what we can do with that. So when I refresh here, check out the top in the sort of nav bar on this fake web page. So while the viz is loading, I have a visual indication to my user that the content was available. This is kind of quick. I probably should have picked something that takes a little bit longer to load, but you can imagine a real world scenario, especially if you got like a really long table. It may take a few seconds to load, and you don't want your user to do anything until that's happening. So again, what we're looking at here is while my viz is loading, I've got a little indicator here. I could do other things like hide the viz, show like a scrim with a loader so that the user can't click on anything. But I wanted to make it really obvious in this example what's happening here. So how did we accomplish this? So if I jump back over into VS Code, right? Like I said, I'm not going to spend too much time breaking down all of the HTML elements here, but basically what you're seeing in this HTML is what's giving us this nav bar, this frame for the content, and all the little sort of icons and things around here. I'm using a CSS framework called Bootstrap, which is free. And if you've got little lightweight projects, it makes it really easy to do things like basic interactivity with buttons and all sorts of things, just a lot easier than writing all of your own CSS. What I'm not using, and this is just a call out, that I'll come back to again. I am not using a JavaScript framework like React or Vue.js or Angular or any of those, just because they introduce their own quirks and idiosyncrasies that kind of maybe don't apply across the board. So all of the examples that I'm going to show today are in the most basic vanilla JavaScript that I could come up with. Just know that if you take these into a different framework, you may need to adjust them a little bit, but the concepts are essentially the same, right? So looking at the page, looking at the code in front of us, start off with our HTML, our head, which is sort of the metadata of the web page object. Then we get into the body. So this is the good stuff. We've got our nav bar, and right here, inside, beginning here on line 25, let's focus here. So I have a div, which is just a section of a web page if you've not used this before. And I've given it an ID, and that ID is called loading spinner. And inside of that, we've got some other elements, but these are that orange text that we were looking at before. So all of this that you're seeing is inside of this div called loading spinner, and we're going to come back to that. So then down here, I've got, this is some more stuff to fill out the nav bar, and then we get down into the main container of the lower part of the page that contains our viz. And inside of this, there is an element called Tableau Viz. Now, anyone on the call who is already familiar with front-end development or web page HTML development, you know that Tableau Viz is not a native HTML5 element. So where is this coming from, right? So very important thing that we want to do when working with the Tableau Embedding API is we have to import it, right? So the Tableau Embedding API is available many different places. It's available via Tableau Public. It's available via, I believe, at least one other CDN or content distribution network. It's also available from your Tableau server installation if you have that. So if you have any rules internally about not importing scripts from outside your network, this will also be located within your server. I'm just using the one from Tableau Public because it's easiest for this example. But what we want to do here to tell our page, hey, I'm going to use the Tableau Embedding API, and I want you to give me and recognize everything that comes with it, right? So the first thing I'm going to import is, for this example, Tableau event type, and I'm embedding that, from the jet.js file at this location, which is the embedding API version 3. And then the next thing I'm going to do is tell it which div or span, whichever element in my web page contains the viz that I want to interact with. In this case, document.query selector means find an element with this, an element of this type, I should say. So what this is telling the embedding API.
I don't mean to interrupt, but yeah,
sure.
Can you increase the size of the screen a little bit?
Yeah, a little more. Yeah, no problem.
That looks perfect. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Sure. Thank you, Paolo. Okay, so going back to that. So the document.query selector tells the Tableau Embedding API, when you see an element called Tableau Viz, that is a Tableau Viz, right? In theory, I could name this something else if I wanted to, or if I had multiple Vizes inside of the same page and I wanted to do like Viz 2, Viz 3, Viz 4, I could give them different element names so that I could keep them separate, right? But in this case, we just have the single element called Tableau Viz. And if we remember, that's right here. And so now Tableau, because I'm importing this and I am setting this to a constant, this is telling me that, okay, the Tableau Embedding API knows that I have embedded a viz here, and I can start doing things like event listeners and some of the other things that we're going to see here in just a moment. So talking about that event listener, right? Let's jump back down here. So after I declare the viz as this element called Tableau Viz, the next thing that I'm going to do is add an event listener to that element. And if you are not familiar with JavaScript or you're sort of new, event listeners are native JavaScript. This isn't anything special to Tableau. But what they essentially do, if you're more of a backend developer, it's sort of akin to a webhook. Essentially, it is you are signing up in JavaScript and saying, when something happens, I want to do something else. And you add that to a specific element. And then, when the element is clicked on or changes or whatever you specify happens, then you can run other code. And that's exactly what we're doing here starting on line 66, right? So the syntax here of await, new, promise, resolve, reject, this is just how JavaScript handles asynchronous activities. Going into the full explanation here would be way beyond the scope of this meeting. The good thing is this is the exact same syntax that the playground provides you. And in almost all scenarios, you're going to want to do it this way. Basically, just know that this means I am going to set this up and I'm going to wait until it's done until I do anything else in going top to bottom. Normally, JavaScript tries to thread things and do things synchronously. Sometimes you don't want that to happen because what comes next depends on what happened before, right? So this is just saying, do this next thing and don't do anything else until you've done it, right? So here we get into the actual adding the event listener. So in the syntax here, the first thing is what event followed by do what. So when we imported this module, we imported something called Tableau event type. And in this case, I am interested in when is the viz done loading? When does it first become interactive? So that is an event type here. So I specify my event type.firstInteractive. And then the second part here, starting right here, this parentheses arrow, this is called an arrow function. It's just shorthand JavaScript for an anonymous function or a function I'm not going to reuse. And in this case, I'm logging out that the viz is interactive, and I can show what that means if I hop over here, right? So in the browser console under messages, if I refresh this here, then as soon as the viz is ready to go, I'm also proving it there. Good for debugging. You know, probably wouldn't leave it in if you're going to production, but that's up to you. So the first thing I'm going to do is resolve the promise, which basically just means I'm done waiting. And then next, I'm calling a function called hide spinner. And that's that spinner at the top that we already talked about. So where did this hide spinner come from? Well, you'll see directly below this, I am importing my funcs.js or functions.js, name whatever, however you like. So I have said, again, just to recap, what I've said here is when this viz first becomes interactive, tell me or do something, which in this case is log that it's interactive in the browser, resolve our promise, and then call this hide spinner. Well, what does hide spinner do exactly? So let's jump over into funcs.js. And as you can see, this is very simple. JavaScript makes it really pretty easy to show hide elements without doing anything super special. But looking through this line by line, so of course I'm just declaring the name and wrapping it line 1 and 3. But on line 2, remember on index.html, I pointed out that the div that contains our spinner has an ID called loading spinner. So when I give an element an ID, that means I can then reference it by that same ID with JavaScript, and it makes it really easy. So document, which means the entire HTML document that's been rendered, get element by ID, and that ID is loading spinner. And then I'm setting the style.visibility, which are both CSS classes, to hidden. So that's how we accomplish making it so that, okay, give me an indication, or give the user an indication that something has not finished loading yet, or please wait until everything's ready to go. Don't start clicking yet. However you want to think about that. And I think that's a great, an easy kind of conceptual way to dive into some of the things that are really important when it comes to embedding, such as these event listeners and really sort of basic JavaScript to show hide things, or you could change the style of things, however you wanted to handle that. So let's take things a step further now. So I'm going to stop serving this page, and we'll hop into the intermediate example. And so sort of, let's get these out of the way. Same basic scenario, right? I've got functions, style, and index, and I'm going to serve the index here. Same thing, open with live server. And in this example, I have the same content as loading. So it's very easy to combine multiple different things. So I had my same content as loading. Obviously, this is just one of the sample dashboards that comes with Tableau. But let's start looking at how we can make a little bit more impactful two-way interaction here, right? So, right now, just like anything, I might want to start clicking around. Maybe I want to zoom in on some states that, stick out to me. Maybe I'm a sales rep responsible for the West Coast. So let me just select the West Coast states and show what happens. Okay. Well, now I've made a selection, right? As expected, the other views in the dashboard are filtered by the selection that I made, but I also got this popover on the left, right? And this is not part of Tableau. What you see on the left is part of the web page. And so you can see here are the states you selected along with some profit ratio information. That was just a a dimension, or excuse me, a measure that I picked. You can pick whatever you want. So now I can start to see how, okay, I'm building things that go both ways. Okay, well, what if I want to change up my selection a little bit? Okay, I can click on clear all, and that returns my viz to its original state, as if I had selected nothing, right? So let's make another selection here. Let's say, okay, let me get, most of the East Coast here. But because of the way maps work, right, I'm going to end up getting some states that I probably don't want in that selection. So let's say, oh, okay, well, because of the shape of things, I got Ohio. I don't really want that to be part of this analysis. So I can click here and remove it from the selection as well. Let's do the same, Tennessee, probably these aren't in alphabetical order, but Tennessee probably shouldn't be in there either. And then West Virginia shouldn't be in there. So you can start to see, again, how I can start to build an experience using the embedding API plus my application that you could almost really never rebuild with the out-of-the-box experience of Tableau without getting, extremely, extremely hacky, if at all. This also, you can take this a step further if you start thinking about if you have like an ordering system, an inventory system, any sort of system where maybe your data, some of your visualizations are in Tableau, but you want your users to be able to make a selection and carry that data forward into another workflow. I could very easily, based on this selection, add some more functionality to, send an email to folks that might be interested, send an email for, my reports that are responsible for these states based on, some thresholds. Pass this into an ordering system, into an inventory management system. Really, your imagination is the limit here. So let's dive into what we're doing here, because we have a couple of different interactions to take a deeper dive into. So if we start with index.html, the basic bones of this example are the same. We have some CSS, we have our Bootstrap, we have our nav bar. We bootstrapped the CSS framework that I used for this example, calls that an off canvas. You might also call it a pop over or a slide in. But essentially, when I'm talking about the off canvas, from here forward, I am talking about this thing that pops in from the right, just to be clear. So we have our off canvas, which has a few items that we'll come back to. We have the same viz container that we had before, again, with our element named Tableau viz, and then our Bootstrap, so our boilerplate for Bootstrap stuff. So let me turn on word wrap so we get everything on one line. There we go. So we have our import for the Tableau Embedding API again. And we can see here that this time I am importing an event type as well as something called selection update type. And I'll talk about what that means in just a second. But I am importing these from the same place, same way. And the first thing that I declare, again, is that my element called Tableau Viz is the Tableau content that I want want to make interactive, right? So first thing that I'm going to do is the exact same thing from the last example. Remember I said our spinner is still in there. So that is handled the exact same way with the exact same event listener. And to prove I'm not lying, the function called hide spinner in this JS file is exactly the same. So that we already know all about, right? So then I'm going to go further after I have my first interactive. The next event listener that I am interested here for the interactions that you saw is called a mark selection change. Name's pretty well implied there, but it basically any time the selection of marks that the user makes has changed. So whether they select new marks, clear all marks, whichever, this event listener will fire what comes next. And so this, again, is shorthand for a function, E meaning take in the element of what fired that. So again, I'm not going to go too deep into that, but essentially I am just taking the viz and then getting some additional things out of it. So if we keep going on line 108, so E detail worksheet, get selected marks async. That's what I want to focus in on here. Get selected marks async is directly from the Tableau Embedding API. It's a function that comes with it. And as the name implies, it gives me the marks that the user has selected. Async is important here, and that means that, again, this may not happen right away, and unless you handle it asynchronously in JavaScript, then JavaScript may try to jump to the next thing, and in many cases, that's not what you want. How we handle that is with this notation called .then, and that means do this followed by this. And so I'm taking the marks that were retrieved by getSelectedMarksAsync and running them through the next section, which begins here and ends here. So if I've selected nothing, then just log out that nothing is selected, and that's fine. I don't need anything. I don't need to do anything at that point. Then if I do have selections, though, so in my else, I'm going to run some additional code here, and one of them being, or the first thing being, a loop here. So marks.data.forEach. This is just vanilla JavaScript. And this is a loop. This is a for loop. If you're familiar with Python, this is the same as using a for loop. And what I'm doing here is just saying, for every mark that I got from this call, then I am going to do a couple things. The selected marks columns, which come from this file, which I'll jump into in a minute, is the marks. It comes from mark.columns, and the selected marks data comes from mark.data. I'm going to do some data formatting, and then I'm going to do a show hide. And then finally, if the worksheet that I'm working out of is called sale map, then I'm going to do something called build state DOM list. And I'm going to go over that here in just a moment, right? So before I jump into those, just to finish out what's happening in this script. So the first thing, because I have a dashboard this time, I want to make sure and activate that dashboard. And that just means that the embedding API knows where my mark selections and things like that should be targeted and what's happening. And then in here, I am setting the active worksheet within that dashboard to something called sale map. This is all boilerplate. And again, if you play around in the embedding API playground, it will give you this as an example. All right, so let's look into some of these things that we're doing, like formatting this data, showing and hiding, building our actual page. So we have our hide spinner here. This we've already looked at. The marks data that comes back from making that get selected marks async call with the embedding API is a little, I won't use the word messy, but it's not as straightforward as I would like it to be when I'm working with building elements in a web page. So in order to make that a little bit easier to read and easier to deal with when you're building elements, I've just run it through a simple function here that's called format data. And all that I'm doing is for each mark in the row, I'm looping through, I'm essentially pivoting it so that I have one row that has the column name or the field name plus its value. Whereas when you get the response, what you'll get back is you get sort of a unpivoted where each mark also has all the columns associated with it. And it gets a little, again, it's very, there's a lot of duplication if you don't clean this up. So essentially all I'm doing is cleaning this up so that we get data that's more tabular that we're used to dealing with in a front end design. So again, we're just pivoting data essentially. And again, this should look familiar because we have done something similar. So hide details pane, again, that's our off canvas, our pop-in, whatever you want to call it. And I am just finding that element by its ID. And then in this case, I am removing a class called show. That comes from Bootstrap. Bootstrap, the way you toggle this on and off is with a CSS class called show. So in this case, I am just removing that, which causes it to disappear. Like that's exactly what happens, right? So let's jump back over. And then the next one, I have a show hide. So this is more of a toggle. There are instances where I want to specifically say, go away. And then there may be instances where, depending on what's there, show or don't show. So we're doing something very similar here. I'm getting my off canvas. I am then saying if the length of my formatted data is 0, so I haven't selected anything, then remove that show class if it exists, because there's no point in having that details pane show if there's no details. Otherwise, if the length of this is greater than 0, then I will show it. And that's what's happening when I do. So right now, I set that length, the length of marks that I have selected in this is 0, so it went away. As soon as I select one or more marks, then it shows up. Clear selected marks. This is what's happening when I click on this button. And as the name implies, we could probably guess what's happening here. But I'm just taking in the worksheet, and the worksheet has a method straight from the embedding API called clear selected marks. So this takes care of the Tableau side of things for me. And then all I'm doing in addition to that is clearing out my local state data that's causing the slide in to show or not show. In this case, I am explicitly setting those lengths to 0 and then calling show hide. So as soon as I do this calls and says, okay, remove this. It shouldn't be shown. Second to last, another thing that we're doing here is this value that shows up here is a profit ratio, and in Tableau, since it's a percentage, Tableau returns it as a decimal. Typically when we're talking about ratios or profit ratios specifically, we want to talk about that in percentages. So all I'm doing is multiplying it by 100, rounding it to 2 decimals, and adding a % sign. That's all that's happening here. A little bit of text formatting. So the big one that's happening in this one is this build state DOM list. And if you're new to front end development, the DOM, or the document object model, is what defines what you see on a web page. So when you see something like this, all of this HTML body script, all of the elements that are in here, they all make up the DOM of the page. So what I'm doing here is taking the elements that are in my the data that I've already formatted from getting my marks, and then creating some new elements to display here. So this is a little bit dense. I won't read all of it, but essentially for every formatted mark, I've already formatted things at this point. For every formatted mark, I am creating all of the elements that you see here. So I'm creating this rounded box that they exist in, then the space for their name, the space for the profit ratio with formatting. So green if it's positive, red if it's negative, a little indicator, and then my icon here to remove. So all of that is being built here on the fly so that it's reactive. If I were to try to hard code these anywhere inside of there, then I would have to be really selective about, okay, if Washington is selected, then show Washington, but not hide everything else. So you could very well do it that way. But instead of doing it this way and just creating the elements and injecting them into the DOM, then your popover, your slide in is truly reactive. It will only ever contain what it needs to contain based on the selections that you've made. So again, just going through and creating the box, the title, the ratio, all of that stuff. And then this down here, append child, is how I'm adding all of those things into the actual HTML so that I wind up with what we see here. And we do all of that until we get down here and format the very last thing and append it to that container, at which point, it will show. Some of these other ones, so the last one that I want to show is how we make these marks, right? So select state marks. I'm passing it a worksheet and the states. And again, in here, if the number of states I've selected is 0, then let's clear that. Otherwise, what I want is select marks by value async. And the field name is the state, and the value is the unpacked list of states that I've sent to JavaScript. And in this case, or sorry, that I've sent via JavaScript to Tableau. And in this case, this value select to replace means if I already have something selected, this essentially becomes the new selection. If you can do select append or add, I can't remember the exact terminology, but that would mean if there's already a selection, add on to it. Like think of like an incremental refresh of an extract. So if we just really quickly look at where we're calling these things, right? So if I go into my slide over, which is right here, right? So hide details pane, that's what happens when we click on this X, right? That's what we would expect. Hiding it would hide it. What's calling here, clear selected marks. That's the same as clicking on this. So clear all selections calls clear selected marks. What happens here when I make a selection, that was down here in my second event listener, which was for get selected marks. And then that goes on to also format, show hide, and build the elements in the page. And then the last thing is the individual X's that are here to remove a single mark. That is actually done in this build state. And so on clicking that remove icon, which is that little X, I am calling select state marks, and I'm filtering out the state that I just clicked on, right? So in this case, I am filtering my list that's already selected to not include South Carolina, for example, to not include Florida. And so that's how, I know that was quick and dirty, and that was a lot of JavaScript really fast. But I do want to give props to both Joshua and Lee, who also posted really great examples of using the embedding API on LinkedIn. So if you want to see some more examples, definitely check their profiles for their approaches. But this is how you can get started with embedding with some really vanilla JavaScript. And take it from there. The sky's the limit. Really, your imagination will take you as far as you want once you realize it's just data, right? We're just passing data back and forth between elements of a page or an application. And from then on, you can do really whatever you want. So I'll take a look through the chat and look and see if there's any questions or in the Q&A. But for now, Paula, I will pass it back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carl. That was awesome. Pretty interesting. I have to play around with myself because, yeah, that was really interesting. Okay, so let's move on. I'm going to pass it on to Christian, who is going to be introducing the new challenges related to Tableau MCP. So Christian, take it on.
Sure. Before go to there, is not any questions or anything?
No, I think, yeah.
I did see your question, Christian, and thank you. I meant to say that. All of the code that I just showed is posted on DataDevQuest on the challenges. So if you want to take a minute to digest that a little bit more slowly, everything I showed is posted on the challenge pages on DataDevQuest.com as of earlier today.
And also, this meeting is being recorded, and we are going to publish in YouTube, in our YouTube channel.
Yes, correct.
Yes, good point.
Okay, let's move with this next step. Let me share my screen and let me know if you can see it. Do you have the infinite loops?
We had it, but now it's good.
Okay, can you see the DataDevQuest page?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay, for the person that is never entered here, basically you go to DataDevQuest.com. In this area, you can filter by challenge, and then the last challenge is showing us first. Then in my case, I am proposing two challenges. One is the Tableau MCP for beginner, that basically the challenge that is more about how to use Tableau MCP and Tableau Cloud and Cloud Desktop, sorry. And then in how to do it is basically you need to configure some files. You need to have an account with cloud. Then here I am giving you all the steps and also some cool additional resources. For example, we will soon make a really clear video about how to do it, and also Joshua create a post about that. All of that you can find it here. Basically what you will need to do is install Node.js server, then create a Tableau cloud site. If you don't have it, basically you can use the developer sandbox that is free for use of testing, not for a commercial way. And here is the link how to get it. And if you don't know about that, also I have a post in my personal blog where you can see the steps. Then when you have these, we are going to work with the Superstore data source. In the Superstore data source that you will have is more like exploratory. Like if the first time that you use it, then you can go there and check what is the data that is there. But basically, following all of these steps, you are going to configure a local kind of a server running your machine. And then after that, you will get a desktop, cloud desktop, and connect with the NCP in your machine. One time that is connected and running, I'll say here, then basically you can begin to start doing questions. Then this is the moment that you say is working, and you can get like a list of the data sources, and then it's going to show you which one are the data sources that you have in your site. Now, about the challenge is, hey, there are more tools. Remember that the word tools is related with agents, and that means is all the functions or methods that is basically public or can be used by anything that is connecting with the agent. Then I want that you explore the rest of the tools in the MCP, and then in the Tableau MCP page, there are many tools and it's growing. Then I want that you understand each of them and then try to create a prompt that basically show you or use one of these ones, or at least three. The challenge for you, if you want to continue, is basically explore all of them. And if you already solve it, basically the idea is that you can explore all of the tools, including someone that I consider more advanced, that is the pulse metrics that you will find at the end of these ones. Then that is the first challenge. The second challenge is for the intermediate level. The second challenge is kind of the same, but the difference is that I want that you learn how to do development using Python and create a basic terminal chat box that use ChatGPT and connect with Tableau. Then again, you have all the submissions, all the additional resources, what you need to begin. Also, you will need to have a Tableau site, as I explained before. I am going to use Superstore the same. Then you follow the steps, create the everything, and the only big difference here is that you will need to do a code, and this code I'm using Python. If you want, you can use another language. I mean, it's a good idea to test with another language. It's possible. It's only have the libraries available. And basically, that you are going to do is create a config studio JSON file, where is kind of the same that is doing in the beginner channel. I recommend you that do the first challenge before the beginner and then continue with the intermediate. And the second part that you will need is copy this code that is here and use it in your development. Then after that, you will need to use an OpenAI development API, like create API keys with a secret that basically with this one you can configure and connect with ChatGPT. only for do this, you will need a minimum of credits, means that you need to add money to make it work. I think that is not possible with a free account. It's more like a create more with money. But I think that the minimum value that you can add is $10. And I mean, you can add $10 to make tests, and it's going to take months, and it's still have the same money there, depending on the quantity of tests that you do, right? Another tool that we are going to use is LangFuse, or also if you want, you can do you can use Langsmith. Langsmith is the previous version, but is converted to a proprietary right now. You need to pay for have the standard features in the tool, and LangFuse is the open source version of this one. Then for LangFuse, you need to create an account. Again, they define an APIs and basically configure it in the file. One time that you do that, you will have access to a terminal chat where you can basically prompt questions, and it's going to connect to Tableau. For example, in this case, I say which one is the total of amount of the sales, and basically they give me the value. And the same challenge here is use the tools available in the Tableau MCP and try to resolve all of that. Now, if you already did this part and you know how all the tools works, then another challenge that I propose is about, hey, how can I know that the agent used which tool? If we come back to the challenge here, look at the cloud desktop that do the prompt, and after the prompt is telling you which one is the tool that use it. Then I want to know how to do it in terminal. There is the challenge that I'm proposing. Like, hey, in the terminal, how can you print what tool is used by the agent? And that is all. That is my part. That is my part. I hope that enjoy it. It's a little more complex than the previous one that I did, but it's challenge of the year. It's to finalize the code of the year. I hope that is.
And you have extra time, right? Because we'll be off in January, or sorry, in December. So you have till January.
Yeah, but no, it's pretty exciting. Yeah, thank you, Christian. Okay, let me see. Do we have any questions? Just checking here. Everybody, that's nice. Looking forward to trying with ChatGPT and Python. Okay, yeah, I'm pretty sure Joshua is pretty excited. That's nice. Everybody's excited because everybody's talking about Tableau MCP and ChatGPT and Cloudy and all these AI functions. So let me share my screen so we can wrap up the session for today.
There is another comment, Paula, before we go there.
Sure, go ahead.
Also, in the past, I published a two challenge about BDS, BSQL data services. It's not mandatory. You don't need it to do this challenge of Tableau MCP, but it's a good idea to know the technology of BDS, because in the behinds, basically, what it's doing is connected with the Tableau published data sources and using BDS, and basically the part that LLM do is more like understand the prompt and create the query correctly to throw it by BDS. Then if you want to know more, basically BDS is also a component in all of these puzzle. And we already have a challenge in the past, and it's the solution there too.
Got it. Did you put it under the resources when you were listing the resources?
Yes, I remember that I say I recommend you to go to this in the blog post. But let me check.
Yeah. So what you are saying is that the way it's fetching the data is through BDS, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I was wondering about that. What does it use to actually get the data? So
yes. Currently, it's only for published data source. But Joe mentioned in the DataDev Day that in a future is really possible that is also extended to workbooks, embedded workbooks, embedded data sources in workbooks. There is some feature that is coming. It's still not defined when, but at least is a topic. Then we're really interesting for the AI stuff to make that works.
Got it. Sounds good. Okay, so let me just share my screen here just to finalize. Okay, so I hope everyone enjoy our session today. We have pretty interesting challenges. Thank you, Kyle, and thank you, Christian, and thank you everyone who attended. So last but not least, don't forget to join our DataDev community. If you haven't yet, we have this Slack channel where you can just, ask questions and just talk with all the community. And again, just a reminder that this is for everybody. Don't feel intimidated. I'm reading here the from Kyle. I have a degree in German with a minor in music. I didn't know that. That's pretty awesome. So everybody, like, it doesn't matter what your background is. Everybody, if you are interested about this, you just need to put a little bit of time, ask questions, and you can succeed and go through the challenges. We really hope you join us. When you submit the challenges, we have a form, so please fill out the form, and so we can know who is working on the challenges. And I think that's a wrap. That's the last slide that I have here. Thank you again, everyone, and we hope to see you in the next session.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you for a wonderful 2025. Can't wait to keep this going in 2026.
Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening and good night. And
Wow.
see you later.
Wow. Thank you for your support.
Wow, thanks for staying.
Again. Wow.
And yeah, Josh, to Josh's point, happy holidays, everyone. Thank you so much.
Happy holidays.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.